Far we have traveled across the lands of Nosgoth. We have looked at very interesting characters, we've looked at places, we've even talked about some interesting situations that have developed throughout its history. But as the coin of fate keeps on turning and turning and turning, it leaves us to ponder a certain question that I find very, very unique indeed, which is, what was the fate of the original timeline? What was supposed to happen from the beginning? What was supposed to happen to Kain? What was supposed to happen to Nosgoth? What was going to happen in this world had Kain never gone back in time and changed the timeline, killing Sir William the Just? Well, we are going to dive right into that. Buckle on up, we're going to get kind of deep in with the lore, but besides that, this has been Freezer 700. Please don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. So, just as a quick reminder and a refresher for some people who haven't played the first Blood Omen game, there has been a lot that has happened up to this point. And right up to this point where Kain is about to change the timeline, what has happened is the legions of the Nemesis is raping and pillaging and destroying everywhere that they go. They descend from the north, and they're being led by the Nemesis, which we find out is Sir William the Just. Now, what is interesting about this is that Kain only goes back in time to save his own ass. He's literally leading the Army of Hope, the last army in Nosgoth, the last kingdom that can stand a chance against the Nemesis. But they are totally outnumbered, outskilled, and there's no real hope. Kain himself is the sole survivor, and he is surrounded in the thickest of fighting, surrounded by dead warriors of friend and foe, drinking as much blood as he can gorge upon, but still he is taking wounds and he is getting a beating. So he activates a strange device that he got when he killed the Pillar Guardian of Energy, known as the Jewel. Turns out it was a scheme by Mobius to cause him to go back in time. Now, here's the interesting idea, is that had Kain not gone back in time, he would have died. Now, what would happen to Nosgoth after that would be very interesting indeed. So here we have our premise. With Kain lying dead and slaughtered, there still are a few vampires that exist within Nosgoth. After all, the Seraphan Order wasn't rekindled. So, with a few vampires left alive, and unfortunately for Vorador, the vampires have technically meddled with human affairs. This is not good. You see, after the Nemesis' army sweeps through and cleans up the last of the Army of Hope, they would notice that Kain was the last survivor and had killed quite a few of their numbers, and he was a vampire. In fact, they would realize later on when they destroy the very kingdom that they realize that this vampire is the one who roused support and roused the army to fight the Nemesis to begin with. This would be enough fuel to the fire for Mobius to spill into the Nemesis's ear, whispering to him about how the vampires are a threat to his people, that the vampires are the next threat to his legion, that if anything should be laid to waste and subjected to slavery, it would probably be the vampires. After all, the Nemesis was noted for gathering a large legion of slaves. So, if he's gathering a lot of slaves, and here he has a bunch of vampires living in caves that come out and steal your slaves and drink their blood, they're going to be a bit of an issue for your empire. And William the Just, being the Nemesis, we knew that he really did care a lot about his people, and he was willing to do just about anything to make sure his people were safe. Even though that meant exterminating other people, that was totally fine to him. So here he's presented with a new threat, one that is not human, one that would actually take a bit of hunting. This is where I believe when Kain says in Soul Reaver 2 that the deck is rigged, that no matter what he did, he was ultimately screwed, this is what I believe he is referring to, is that even if he wasn't the last vampire, the vampires were fucked. the vampires would have been wiped out by the Legion of the Nemesis. And the difference is that the Legion of the Nemesis would not create some new utopia. They wouldn't create a new renaissance like the vampires did. Instead, they would just simply destroy the world, hoard all of its resources to themselves, and then once King William dies, or the Nemesis dies, the Legion would probably just break apart and form different kingdoms again, and the cycle would just begin anew. But here's the problem. The pillars would fall. The pillars would definitely fall. There's only 3 Pillar Guardians alive at this moment, and they are still corrupt, and they have no intention of trying to cleanse the corruption. One of them, of the 3, is actually incapable of doing it because he is being possessed. So, the 3 Pillar Guardians left is Anacroth. As we find out, he's a coward. He's a Pillar Guardian of states. Very ironic that. Here he is. He's supposed to monitor the states of matter and such, but yet he can't even afford time to fix the state of the pillars. Great. And then we have Mobius the Time Streamer, who pretty much orchestrated the pillars' corruption to begin with. And he did all this just so he could kill vampires because he just hated their guts so much. So he's not going to care to fix the damn pillars. Lastly, we have the one who's incapable, Mortanius. He is being possessed at the moment by the Hilden Lord, and this would leave the world in utter shit. Because here we would have the legions of the Nemesis. They sweep through Nosgoth, burning, destroying everything. All civilization is doomed. But now the pillars are going to fall, and the 3 Pillar Guardians that are left are not going to be able to help humanity survive what is to come, which is the Hilden invasion. The Hilden would probably come in through swarms of demons, just raining through the sky, just like the burning of Avernus Cathedral. This world would be utterly destroyed. So when it comes to the fate of the original timeline, things were definitely bad. If anything, things would probably be much worse. But either way, Mobius would have his victory. The vampires would be exterminated. This is where Kain is very interesting as a character, and why he's so unique as an anti-hero is that he really did make the right choice. At least by him being the last vampire, he can control what happens to Nosgoth. Whereas, if he was exterminated, Vorador, while he is definitely a legendary vampire, the Nemesis would be very well guarded against Vorador. After all, Kain himself could kill most of the Pillar Guardians with no issue. In fact, there's one point where you're fighting 3 of them at the same time, and you don't really have too much difficulty, just like Vorador. But the Nemesis, when you're infiltrating his legion and you're fighting his stronghold, even 50 years prior, when you go back in time, it is actually difficult. His troops are very strong indeed. So for Vorador to take on an entire legion, I just don't see it happening. And especially with Mobius being able to manipulate time and understand what is going to happen in the future, he could easily thwart Vorador's attempts to stop the Nemesis from exterminating the vampires. Either way, the world is utterly screwed. And the original timeline, had it not been interfered with by Kain, things would have been much worse. But then that leaves the question of why. Why indeed did Mobius do this? Well, I think the real reason why Mobius altered time and manipulated Kain to cause the paradox and to change the timeline was quite simple. It was simply to restore the pillars. Because despite Mobius being somewhat insane, he still strived to cure the pillars of their corruption. Now, Mobius wasn't aware at the time that the pillars would decay anyways, as long as humans were their guardians, as it requires vampires, not humans. Humans are just not good enough. They need to become vampires in order to fully sustain the magic that's keeping the pillars up. Besides that, humans are subject to manipulations, and Mobius would know very well on that because he's the one who manipulated the whole scheme to begin with. So in the end, Mobius's goal was pretty singular, just wipe out vampires. But He couldn't wipe out vampires in the original timeline because of the fate of the world. The world would have been absolutely destroyed. Whereas by carefully calculating the time stream and by carefully calculating his actions and the actions of Kain, he could easily navigate a world or a future where many human kingdoms still stand, many human kingdoms still exist, and the world is not utterly burned to ribbons, where the world isn't just giant concentration camps of slaves. No, humanity would still pretty much stay the same. The only difference is that now there's no vampires in the world. So to Mobius, this would be enough incentive to protect the world. And of course, he would probably rely a bit too on Kain's altruism, hoping that Kain, throughout his entire journey of restoring the pillars, would have taken his own life and restored the pillar as well. Of course, this was too much to hope for, and as it comes to reveal in Soul Reaver 1 and 2, Mobius knew full well that Kain wasn't going to actually sacrifice himself. But he still was hoping. In the end, Mobius's goals were pretty singular, which was kill the vampires. So, besides that, that has been the fate of the original timeline. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys comment down below what you guys think. Maybe you guys enjoy the way that I spin the tale and the way I look at the lore from my perspective. Besides that, see you guys next time. And as always, like, comment, subscribe. Tell your little communities about me. Help spread the love. We're almost at 1,000 subscribers. Hell, by the time this video is uploaded, I'll probably be past that point. Good times.